I overheard my family's plan to humiliate me at Christmas. That night, Mom called, furious. "Where are you?" I replied calmly, "Did you enjoy my gift?" I had always believed Christmas was about warmth and family. But in December, I learned my own family intended to publicly humiliate me and erase me from their lives. All in the name of love. My name is Clara Bennett. I am 29, and Christmas used to be my absolute favorite holiday. Growing up in the Bennett household, the festivities were always lavish. But as the black sheep with a jewelry business instead of a corporate career, I constantly felt I had to work harder to fit in. Then, in December, I arrived early to help with preparations and overheard a conversation that shattered everything. My own family, the people I loved, were planning to humiliate me at Christmas dinner. And while I sat there distraught, they decided to empty my childhood bedroom. The Bennetts of Greenwich, Connecticut, were known for three things: money, power, and unrealistic expectations. My father, Richard Bennett, built his investment business from the ground up. The kind of success story everyone admires. My mother, Margaret, came from wealth and has served on enough charity boards to fill a small notepad. Then there were my siblings. Ethan, 33, has flawlessly followed in our father's footsteps. Olivia, 31, became the corporate attorney our parents loved to boast about at country club events. And then there was me, Clara Bennett, who was meant to complete this picture-perfect family trio. But nevertheless, I became the family's disappointment. Since childhood, the plan had always been clear: attend a prestigious institution, earn a law or finance degree, and then join either the family firm or a corporation respectable enough to mention at dinner parties. I dutifully attended Columbia University. However, during my sophomore year, I took a metals class as an elective, and everything clicked. For the first time, I felt truly alive creating with my hands. By senior year, instead of applying to law schools, I was selling my handmade jewelry at campus events. The family's reaction was swift and harsh. My father refused to speak to me for 4 months. My mother arranged meetings with family connections for law firm recruiting. My siblings alternated between awkward silence and criticizing me for wasting my potential. Despite their objections, I graduated and used my savings to rent a small studio apartment in Brooklyn and set up my first workshop. I ate ramen for months, worked 16-hour days, and painstakingly built Clara designs from the ground up. 6 years later, my pieces were sold in boutiques across New York and New Jersey. I was finally building a good life doing what I loved. Not that my family considered it real success. Every family gathering involved the same discussion about my career. Mom would sigh and ask, "Are you still doing that jewelry thing?" Dad would add, "When you're ready to get serious about your future, let me know." Ethan would offer to review my books, as if I were pretending to run a business rather than operating one. Olivia would generously hand me corporate job postings for executive assistant roles, as though my degree and business experience were meaningless. Christmas in the Bennett home was always an exceptionally extravagant affair. My parents owned a colonial estate with 6 bedrooms, a grand staircase perfect for family portraits, and a dining room that could seat 22 guests. Every December, my mother transformed it into something from an architectural magazine. Professional decorators brought in imported decor and color palettes that changed each year. These gatherings revolved more around status than celebration. The guest list included extended relatives, business partners, and influential acquaintances. Conversations centered on promotions, vacations to luxury destinations, and which Ivy League schools were courting which students. In that environment, my small jewelry business might as well have been a lemonade stand. Still, every year I tried. I wore nice clothing I could barely afford. I prepared responses about my business that sounded more impressive than they truly were. I brought carefully crafted gifts that were often returned or quietly set aside. I arrived with homemade cookies that sat untouched beside the professional caterer's spread. When I spoke about my latest collection, I received polite smiles and swift changes of subject. This Christmas was especially important to my parents. Relatives from the West Coast and Europe were coming, some of whom had not visited in years. My mother had been planning since August, hiring extra housekeeping staff and renovating the guest rooms. When she called me in November about the event, I heard genuine excitement in her voice for the first time. "Clara, everyone will be here this year. Even Grandma Eleanor is flying in from London. We need to show a united family front." That small hint of inclusion motivated me to try even harder. I spent 4 months creating a unique set of bespoke pieces for each guest. Cufflinks featuring the design from my father's first business card. A delicate necklace showcasing my mother's favorite flowers. For my siblings, I created matching bracelets with subtle symbolism from our childhood. I carefully designed pieces for extended family members, based on their preferences and personalities. I even invested in new business cards with a discreet gold foil logo and upgraded packaging to impress the Bennetts. Maybe this would be the year they finally recognized my business as legitimate. Maybe this would be the Christmas when I finally felt like I belonged in my own family. The week before Christmas, I finished the last of my holiday special orders, packed my family gifts, and drove my used Subaru from Brooklyn to Greenwich, arriving at the estate around 2:15 p.m. on December 18th. Despite everything, I stayed hopeful. Maybe this time would be different. I had no idea this visit would permanently change the course of my life, my relationship with my family, and my understanding of what Christmas truly meant. I pulled into my parents' circular driveway at 2:15 p.m. The mansion was already fully decorated for Christmas, with professionally installed white lights outlining every architectural detail, oversized wreaths in each window, and two perfectly symmetrical trees flanking the front door. A team of landscapers was putting the final touches on the outdoor decor. I grabbed my overnight bag and the box containing examples of my new jewelry pieces, planning to show my mother how much thought I had put into each one. Maybe this would be the year she finally appreciated my artistic skills. Rosa, the housekeeper, opened the door with a warm smile. Unlike my family, Rosa had always shown genuine interest in my jewelry business, proudly wearing a simple silver bracelet I had given her years ago. "It's lovely to see you, Miss Clara. Your mom and sister are in the kitchen with the caterer." I thanked her and stepped into the immaculate house, noticing elegant floral arrangements on every surface and new furniture. In the living room, the kitchen had recently been renovated, with bright white marble and stainless steel appliances, giving it the look of an operating room rather than a place to cook. My mother and Olivia were leaned over a tablet with a man in a chef's coat. They barely looked up when I walked in. "Clara, finally," my mother said, not bothering to hug me. "The guest room in the east wing is ready for you. Not your old room. We needed more storage this year." No greeting. No "how was your drive?" No acknowledgement that my former room had been mine for 19 years. "Hello, Mom." "Olivia, the house looks beautiful," I said, trying to start things off well. Olivia glanced up briefly. "You look exhausted. The city must be wearing you down." It wasn't a question, just a judgment disguised as concern. I forced a smile. "Actually, business has been excellent. Very busy with holiday orders. I brought some samples of the gifts I made for everyone to show you both." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "We're in the middle of finalizing the menu. Maybe later. The caterer needs our attention." The caterer, a tall man with a neatly trimmed beard, gave me a sympathetic look. I had clearly been dismissed. "Sure, no problem. I'll just take my things upstairs." Neither of them responded as I left the kitchen. The familiar knot of disappointment tightened in my stomach, but I pushed it down. This wasn't new. I only wanted to find the right moment to connect with them. After settling into the guest room, I went to look for my father and brother, hoping for a warmer welcome. As I approached my father's study, I heard several voices in what sounded like a heated discussion. I was about to knock when I heard my name. "Clara needs to understand that this jewelry hobby is not a sustainable future," my father said firmly. My hand froze inches from the door. "That's why I invited Stephen," my brother Ethan added. "As a financial advisor, he can give her real numbers during the intervention. Show her how unstable her situation is compared to an actual career intervention." My pulse quickened as I quietly positioned myself beside the half-open door. Out of sight, but fully able to hear. "Do you really think an intervention at Christmas dinner is the best approach?" This voice belonged to my Uncle Daniel, my father's younger brother. "It's the perfect time," my mother said. I hadn't even noticed she'd left the kitchen. "With the entire family there, she'll feel enough pressure to finally make a sensible decision." "I've already spoken with Gregory at the firm," my father continued. "He can open a spot for her in the marketing department. Nothing demanding, but it will give her structure and a decent salary." My sister Olivia's voice joined in. "I think we need to be very direct. The last time I suggested she consider other options, she went on about how her Instagram followers had increased, as if that were a real measure of success." They all laughed, the sound cutting through me like shattered glass. "What exactly are you planning to say?" Uncle Daniel asked, still sounding unsure. "We'll wait until after the main course," my mother said, her voice shifting into the tone she used when planning charity galas. "Richard will express our concern for Clara's future. Then Ethan will introduce Stephen, who will give a brief financial comparison of her so-called business versus a corporate career." "I've gathered some numbers," Ethan explained. "Based on her apartment size and lifestyle, she's barely making $35,000 a year. Stephen will compare that to Entry-level corporate positions that start at $70,000. They had analyzed me, my life, my home, my income, and assigned a value to me. The violation felt physical, like a blow to the chest. I still don't understand why this has to happen publicly at Christmas dinner, Uncle Daniel said. Because she needs to feel the weight of family expectations. My mother replied calmly. When she sees everyone's concern, she'll finally understand how her decisions affect the family's reputation. The Whitman's daughter just became a junior partner at Sullivan and Cromwell. And our daughter sells trinkets at craft fairs. It's embarrassing. Trinkets. Craft fairs. They had no idea I had moved far beyond those early years, and was now supplying reputable boutiques and receiving frequent custom orders. They hadn't bothered to ask. What happens if she refuses? Uncle Daniel asked. A long silence followed before my father answered. Then we make it clear that our financial support ends entirely. I nearly gasped before catching myself. What financial support? I had been completely self-sufficient since graduation. Something they would have known if they had paid attention to my actual life. While she's at dinner, I've arranged for the staff to clear out her childhood bedroom completely. My mother said. Cousin Vanessa needs the space, and it's time Clara understood she can't keep one foot in each world. My vision blurred with tears. My childhood bedroom, filled with memorabilia, journals, and keepsakes, would be emptied while I sat through a public humiliation. She still has those ridiculous participation trophies from grade school art classes on the bookshelf, Olivia added with a laugh, as if they proved my decision to turn down a traditional job for this jewelry hobby. Did you see what she wore for Thanksgiving? My mother chimed in. That handmade dress that looked like something from a thrift store. If she insists on this creative lifestyle, she should at least dress appropriately when representing the family. The outfit had been designed by a friend starting her own small fashion brand. I had worn it proudly to support her. Well, maybe this intervention will finally get through to her, Ethan said. 29 isn't too late to start over with a respectable career. I have the perfect analogy ready, my mother added, pleased with herself. I'm going to tell her that her little jewelry business is like the macaroni art we used to hang on the refrigerator. Cute as a childhood phase, but not something to build a life on. They laughed again, and I heard glasses clink in a toast. I stepped away from the door silently, tears streaming down my face. Every word cut through years of trying to earn their approval. Years of shrinking myself to fit their expectations. Years of hoping for validation that was never coming. Their plan was unmistakable: ambush me, humiliate me in front of the entire extended family, pressure me to abandon my business, and remove me from the family home on Christmas Day. I drifted back to the guest room in a daze, locked the door, and collapsed onto the floor, my back against the bed. The beautiful jewelry pieces I had crafted for them sat in their velvet boxes, hours of work, thought, and love they would never appreciate. For the first time, I saw with absolute clarity what my family truly thought of me and my choices. This wasn't tough love or misguided concern. This was control, manipulation, and a fundamental disregard for who I was. I don't remember packing my overnight bag. I don't remember walking down the back stairs to avoid being seen. I don't remember the brief conversation with Rosa, when I mumbled something about an emergency in the city. The next clear memory I had was sitting in my car at a highway rest stop, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. I called Emily, my best friend from college and the person who helped me set up my first jewelry booth at a local market. She answered on the second ring. Hello, Clara. Are you already at the family compound of doom? How bad is it this year? The sound of her voice, familiar, warm, steady, broke through the shock that had numbed me. I burst into tears, barely able to form sentences between sobs. They were planning an intervention at Christmas dinner. Financial shaming, clearing out my room. Whoa, slow down, Emily said, her tone immediately shifting to concern. Where are you right now? Are you safe? I looked around at the brightly lit rest area where generic Christmas music played softly through outdoor speakers. I'm at a rest stop. I left. I couldn't stay after what I heard. Good. You shouldn't be driving while you're this upset. Okay, just breathe for a minute. I followed her instructions, taking several deep breaths as she waited patiently. After a few moments, I managed to explain everything I had overheard. Emily listened without interrupting and then said exactly what I needed. Those absolute monsters. Clara, you know none of what they said is true, right? Your business is real and thriving. You are talented and hardworking. They're just too stuck in their narrow definition of success to see it. But what if they're right? I whispered, old insecurities rising. What if I'm just pretending to run a business while everyone else has real careers? Are you kidding me, Clara? You turned down wholesale orders last month because you were at full production capacity. You have a wait list for custom pieces. You just hired your first part-time assistant. Those were not the signs of a failing business or hobby. She was right. While I had downplayed my accomplishments in front of my family to avoid criticism or having to justify my choices, the truth was that Clara Designs had grown steadily year after year. I had recently been approached by a major retailer about carrying a diffusion line of my most popular pieces. I was considering renting a larger studio to accommodate the growth. Why do I still care what they think? I asked, wiping away tears. Why, after all these years of ridicule and criticism, am I still looking for their approval? Because they're your family, Emily replied gently. And because they trained you from childhood to measure your worth by their standards. Breaking that conditioning takes work. As we talked, memories of other dismissals and humiliations resurfaced. The time my mother introduced me to her friends is still finding her way when I was 24. The business school graduation where my father spent the entire dinner talking about Ethan's new promotion. And the Thanksgiving when Olivia asked if I needed money for proper clothes in front of everyone. Each incident had hurt, but I had always made excuses for them and worked harder to earn their approval. Do you want to stay with me tonight? Emily offered. You shouldn't be alone after this. Thanks, but I think I need my own space to process. I'll call you tomorrow once I've slept. After we hung up, I drove back to my Brooklyn apartment on autopilot. My family viewed the small two-bedroom as a symbol of failure, but when I closed the door behind me, it felt like refuge. This space, paid for entirely by my own work, represented a freedom they would never understand. I walked through the apartment in a haze, grounding myself in the reality of my actual life rather than the imaginary failure my family had invented. The wall was lined with framed press features from design blogs and local magazines that had highlighted my work. My home studio had an efficient, organized workflow. The spreadsheets showed 6 years of steadily increasing revenue. My portfolio held customer testimonials and returning clients. I opened my laptop and pulled up the email I had been avoiding for 3 weeks. Sterling and Sage, a major retailer, had offered a significant opportunity to feature a collection of my pieces in their spring catalog, with a minimum purchase that would triple my annual earnings. I had been unsure about increasing production while maintaining quality, but now, the decision felt obvious. This was a legitimate business opportunity, one any serious entrepreneur would recognize as important. I looked at the childhood photos still on my bookshelf. My family smiling at the beach when I was 11, and my high school graduation with my parents proudly standing beside me. Were those real moments, or staged performances for appearances? Had they ever truly accepted me for who I was? That night, I barely slept, crying, seething, and then experiencing a strange sense of clarity when the pain subsided. By dawn, exhausted but steadier, I knew I had to make a fundamental choice. Keep chasing approval I would never receive, or prioritize my own well-being and worth. For the first time, the answer was clear. I deserved more than what had happened. I deserved more than what they had planned. I deserved to be valued for who I truly was, not who they wanted me to be. The realization didn't instantly undo 29 years of conditioning, but it gave me a small, solid place to stand as I began to build something new. The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes and an unusual sense of clarity. My phone showed 3 missed calls from my mother and a text that read, "Where are you? The caterer needs final numbers." No concern about my sudden departure. No questions about my well-being. Just logistics for her perfect Christmas event. I set the phone aside without responding and poured myself a cup of coffee. As I sat at my small kitchen table surrounded by jewelry designs and order forms, an idea began to form. For once, I wouldn't react emotionally or impulsively. I would be deliberate and strategic, the same way I had been when building my business. First, I called my therapist, Dr. Lang, explained what had happened, and requested an emergency session. Thankfully, she had an opening that afternoon. "What you overheard was emotional abuse, Clara," she said during our meeting. "Their planned intervention wasn't meant to help you, it was meant to control you and force you back into their expectations." "But they're my family," I murmured, the words sounding empty even to me. "Family is supposed to offer love, support, and respect," she replied. "Biological ties don't give anyone the right to belittle you or dictate your life. You built a thriving creative business on your own terms. That deserves recognition, not interference." We spent the rest of the session discussing healthy boundaries and the pain that comes with accepting family members for who they are, not who we wish they were. By the end, I had built an emotional framework to support the practical strategy forming in my mind. Back at my apartment, I created a detailed action plan, breaking everything into small steps. Step 1. Quietly cancel my appearance at the family Christmas party without contacting them directly. They would figure it out when I didn't show up. Step 2. Accept. Sterling and Sage's offered to feature my work in their spring catalog. It was a business decision I had been leaning toward anyway, but the timing felt both symbolic and practical. Step 3. Plan an alternative Christmas celebration with my chosen circle of friends. The people who had consistently supported my dreams and valued my work. Step 4. Arrange delivery of the gifts I had already made, along with personalized messages, to my parents' home on Christmas Eve, the day I had originally been expected to arrive. Step 5. Establish clear boundaries for any future interactions with my family, including what behaviors I would and would not tolerate. Step 6. Retrieve my childhood belongings from my parents' home before they were discarded. The final step was the hardest. I contacted a legal acquaintance who specializes in property rights for advice. She confirmed my concern, since I had moved out years ago. Anything left in my parents' home could be considered abandoned property. However, she recommended sending a certified letter stating unequivocally that I had not abandoned my personal belongings and intended to collect them. This would serve as a legal record of my claim. I wrote the letter immediately, listing specific items of emotional significance from my childhood: bedroom, journals, photo albums, artwork, and early jewelry making materials. I sent it via certified mail that afternoon. Next, I called Emily to tell her my plan and asked for her help. Without hesitation, she offered her family's vacation cottage in the Catskills for our alternative Christmas gathering. It's gorgeous in the winter, she said. There's a huge stone fireplace, plenty of bedrooms for everyone, and it's only 2.5 hours from the city. My parents almost never use it at Christmas since they go to Florida. I reached out to the friends who had become my true support network over the years. Noah, my first retail partner who took a chance on my jewelry in his boutique. Claire, a fellow maker who shared studio space with me during my second year. And Adam, Emily's husband, who had helped build my display racks and website. They all agreed immediately to join what Claire called our chosen family Christmas. The executive at Sterling and Sage was surprised, but thrilled by my prompt acceptance of their offer. We scheduled a meeting for early January to review designs and production timelines. For the gifts, I hired a high-end delivery service that specialized in personalized presentations. The owner was moved by my story and promised to personally deliver each carefully wrapped piece on Christmas Eve, ensuring perfect timing. With each step completed, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and freedom. The sorrow was for the family bond one had always wanted but never had. The freedom came from finally accepting the truth and choosing to prioritize my own well-being. I spent the next 3 days preparing for our alternative celebration, shopping for food, planning activities, and creating small handmade gifts for my friends. I intentionally kept myself busy, knowing that idleness would only lead to doubt and second-guessing. 3 days before Christmas, my parents' lawyer responded to my certified letter instead of them. The reply stated coldly that I could make an appointment to retrieve my belongings after the holidays, with a staff member present to supervise. The formal, impersonal nature of the response confirmed that I had made the right decision. On December 23rd, I packed my car with gifts, food, and winter clothes, preparing to leave for the Catskills the next morning. That night, I sat in my quiet apartment, looking at my Christmas tree, a small but tastefully decorated fir that represented my independent life. For the first time since overhearing my family's plans, I felt completely certain of my choice. I was no longer willing to conform to their narrow definition of success. I would no longer apologize for choosing a path that brought me fulfillment instead of status. I would no longer accept being treated as lesser simply because my ambitions were different from theirs. Tomorrow would mark the start of a new tradition, one built on mutual respect and genuine affection, instead of obligation and appearances. Painful as the break was, it felt like the first truly authentic Christmas of my adult life. December 24th dawned, clear and bright, perfect for the drive to the Catskills. Snow was expected later that evening, promising the white Christmas people wished for but rarely saw in the city. I finished loading my car and took one last look at my apartment, decorated with handmade ornaments and natural garlands my mother would have dismissed as crafty rather than elegant. Everything felt right. The drive upstate was peaceful, with holiday music playing softly as the scenery shifted from urban to rural. By lunchtime, I arrived at the cabin, a stunning timber lodge nestled among snow-dusted trees. Smoke curled from the chimney, a sign that someone had arrived ahead of me. Emily burst through the front door as I parked, hurrying over to help with my bags. "Welcome to Freedom Christmas," she said with a grin. "Adam and I got here an hour ago to start the fire and unpack the groceries." The cabin's interior was everything a winter retreat should be. High ceilings with exposed beams. A large stone fireplace with a crackling fire. Cozy sofas arranged for conversation. And windows that framed the forest outside. Adam was in the open kitchen, unpacking groceries while Christmas music drifted from hidden speakers. "This is perfect," I said, feeling my shoulders relax for the first time in days. Throughout the afternoon, more friends arrived one by one. Noah brought cases of wine from his brother's vineyard. Claire appeared with her exquisite homemade pies and bread. Two more friends, Ryan and Caleb, showed up with extra food and decorations. By 4:30, our chosen family had gathered, and the cabin was filled with laughter, comforting aromas, and genuine warmth. No one asked about my biological family until I brought it up. There were no awkward questions about my business, successful or not. No one made subtle jabs about my choices or appearance. The difference from my family's gatherings could not have been more stark. At exactly 7 p.m., my phone started ringing. I had expected it. This was usually when we assembled for Christmas Eve appetizers at my parents' home. Olivia was the first to call. I stepped into one of the bedrooms for privacy before answering. "Hello, Clara. Where are you now?" "Everyone's asking. Mom's freaking out." Her voice sounded more irritated than concerned. "I'm not coming," I said simply. A pause. "What do you mean you're not coming?" "Of course you're coming. The entire family is here. Grandmother Eleanor just asked about you." I meant what I said. I will not be attending Christmas this year. "You can't just not show up. What am I supposed to tell everyone?" "This is so irresponsible, Clara. Just like your..." She stopped herself, but I knew she was about to say just like your hobby business. "Tell them anything you want, Olivia. I'm sure you'll find a way to spin it while maintaining the family image." She sputtered, caught off guard by my bluntness. Before she could respond, I added, "By the way, everyone's gifts will be delivered this evening. I put a lot of thought into them. I hope everyone enjoys them." I hung up before she could reply. Within minutes, my phone rang again, this time from Ethan. I let it go to voicemail. Then my father called and left another message. Finally came the call I had both expected and dreaded, my mother. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Mother. Where are you, Clara Elizabeth Bennett?" Her voice was tight with restrained anger. "I'm spending Christmas elsewhere this year." "What do you mean elsewhere?" "The entire family is here waiting. The caterer planned for an exact head count. Your grandmother flew in from London. This behavior is completely unacceptable." "Is it?" I asked, surprised at how calm I felt. "What's more unacceptable, me choosing not to come? Or you planning to ambush and humiliate your daughter at Christmas dinner? What's more unacceptable than arranging to clear out my childhood bedroom while I sit at the table? What's more unacceptable than calling my career a hobby and dismissing my achievements as childish?" Silence. Absolute silence. "Then, I have no idea what you're talking about." Of course she denied it. "I heard everything, Mother. Last weekend, in Dad's study. You, Dad, Ethan, and Olivia planning a little intervention with Ethan's friend Stephen to shame me about my finances. Pressuring me to abandon my business for a job at Dad's firm. And planning to clean out my bedroom for cousin Vanessa while I endured your public humiliation." Another long pause, followed by a calculated shift in tone. "Clara, you misunderstood. We're worried about your future. This intervention is coming from a place of love." I actually laughed, surprising both of us. Love? Was it love when you called my handcrafted jewelry trinkets? Was it love when you compared my business to macaroni art on a refrigerator? Was it love when you said I was embarrassing the family because I didn't have a corporate career like the Whitman's daughter? "You were eavesdropping," she said sharply. "I was about to knock on the door when I heard my name. And thank goodness I did, because I would have walked straight into your trap." "This is absurd. You're overreacting as usual. Just tell me where you are and we'll discuss this when you get here." "There's nothing to discuss. I'm not attending Christmas or any event where I'm not treated like an adult, making my own decisions. If you don't show up, your father will be furious. There will be consequences." The threat hung in the air, but for the first time, it didn't faze me. "What consequences, exactly? Cutting me off financially? I've supported myself entirely since graduation. Taking away my childhood bedroom? You're already planning that. Damaging the family's reputation? I'm sure you'll come up with a lovely story to explain my absence." "Clara, you're being dramatic." "No, Mother. I'm finally being honest. I deserve better than how this family treats me. I deserve to be respected for the business I built. I deserve support for my choices, even if they don't match yours. And since I can't get those things from you, I'm spending Christmas with people who genuinely appreciate me. I could hear voices in the background on her end, likely family members listening in. Your gifts will be delivered tonight, I said. I spent months creating custom pieces for everyone. Whether you appreciate them or not is up to you. This conversation is not over, she said coldly. It actually is. Merry Christmas, Mother. I hung up and sat on the edge of the bed, trembling slightly but feeling stronger than I had in years. Emily peeked in after a soft knock. Everything okay? We heard your voice getting firmer. I smiled at her concern. Better than okay. I just confronted my mother for the first time in my life. She grinned and handed me a glass of wine. Then I'd say that calls for a celebration. When I rejoined the group, no one pushed for details, but Noah raised his glass. To Clara, the most talented jewelry designer I know, and the newest member of the Christmas cabin crew. As everyone clinked glasses, my phone buzzed with a notification. To my surprise, it was from my brother Ethan. Not everyone agreed with the intervention idea. Call me when you're ready to talk. An hour later, the delivery service confirmed that all the gifts had been safely dropped off at my parents' home. I could picture the scene. Each family member opening the carefully crafted piece made just for them, accompanied by a message, explaining its significance and gently outlining the boundaries I needed moving forward if a relationship continued at all. For the first time in my life, I spent Christmas Eve exactly where I wanted to be, with people who fully embraced me. The burden of familial expectations I had carried for so long finally lifted, making space for something new and genuine. Our Christmas Eve celebration continued late into the night. We cooked dinner together, each taking charge of a different dish in the spacious kitchen. Unlike the catered affairs at my parents' house, this meal was communal and relaxed. Wine flowed, stories were shared, and laughter filled the cabin. We ate at the long oak table by candlelight, passing dishes around family style instead of being served by staff. Conversation moved easily from creative projects to travel plans to philosophical debates. No one was trying to impress anyone or maintain appearances. It felt real in a way my family gatherings never had. After dinner, we gathered in the living room where Adam tended the crackling fire. Outside, snow drifted softly, creating a postcard-perfect Christmas backdrop. Time for a new tradition, Emily said, pulling out a box of simple wooden ornaments and art supplies. Each year, we make a new ornament to mark something meaningful from the year. As we crafted, trading materials and ideas, I felt a deep, quiet sense of belonging. My ornament was shaped like a bird emerging from an open cage, painted in shimmering gold and deep blue. No one needed me to explain what it represented. Around 11:30, my phone buzzed again, this time with a text from my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister. I just heard what happened. Not everyone agrees with your parents' approach. Your grandma was furious when she found out what they had planned. Your gift was beautiful. Thank you. A cousin messaged shortly after, your jewelry is incredible. I can't believe I never realized how talented you are. Dinner was extremely uncomfortable when your mother announced you wouldn't be attending. There were a lot of questions she didn't want to answer. The messages continued throughout the night and into Christmas morning. December 26th. My absence seemed to have created exactly the situation my mother feared, a crack in her perfect family narrative. Several relatives were apparently very vocal in condemning the intervention plan once it became known. The carefully polished Bennett family image had begun to fracture. Christmas morning at the cottage was everything I had always wished Christmas could be. We woke slowly and gathered in our pajamas around the tree to exchange small, thoughtful gifts we'd brought for one another. Mine, of course, were jewelry pieces I had designed specifically for each friend, each one reflecting something meaningful about them or our relationship. Claire cried when she opened her necklace, a delicate silver pendant featuring a tiny replica of the first ceramic piece of hers I had ever purchased. This is why your business succeeds, she said, wiping tears. You don't just make jewelry, you create meaning. After the gifts, we made breakfast together before heading out for a walk in the freshly fallen snow. The woods were magical, the trees blanketed in white. The only sounds our laughter and the crunch of snow beneath our boots. That afternoon, my Uncle Daniel called, something I hadn't expected. I stepped onto the porch to answer, watching my breath cloud in the cold air. Clara, I want you to know I never supported that intervention nonsense, he said bluntly. Your business is real and impressive. Thank you, Uncle Daniel, I said, genuinely touched. That means a lot. Things are tense here, he continued. When your gifts arrived last night, they caused quite a stir. Your grandma opened her bracelet and announced it was better quality than her Tiffany pieces. Then she demanded to know why no one had Told her how successful your business had become. I couldn't help smiling as I pictured my formidable British grandmother coming to my defense. The truth came out, explosively, over dinner, he said. Your mother tried to gloss over your absence. But your grandmother is far sharper than they gave her credit for. She dragged the entire intervention plan into the open, point by humiliating point. I've never seen her so angry. What did my parents say? I asked, unable to resist. Your father went straight into rationalizing, insisting it was all for your financial stability. Your mother bounced between defending the idea and accusing you of overreacting. Neither approach went over well with the rest of the family. A weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying lifted from my chest. It mattered that others in the family saw how unacceptable the plan had been. There's something else you should know, Uncle Daniel added, his voice softening. I went through something very similar with your grandfather when I chose architecture instead of joining the family business. It took him years to accept my path, but he eventually did. Don't rule out the possibility of reconciliation, but stay firm in your boundaries. After we hung up, I went back inside and shared parts of our conversation with my friends. Their supportive reactions reassured me that I had made the right decision in choosing this genuine celebration over an appearance at my parents' pristine but superficial event. Later that night, as we sat around the fire playing board games and snacking on leftovers, my phone chimed with an email from Sterling and Sage. They had reviewed my portfolio again and increased their initial purchase by 40%. They also wanted to feature me in their spring marketing materials as an emerging designer to watch. I passed my phone around, receiving enthusiastic congratulations, and knew this opportunity would transform my business over the next year. The timing felt symbolic. This professional validation arrived just as I had stopped seeking approval from people who would never truly offer it. The irony wasn't lost on me. By walking away from my family's Christmas and their control, I had created space for the very kind of success they claimed to want for me. Only on my own terms, not theirs. As the night went on and everyone drifted off to bed, I stayed by the window watching the snowfall. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely aligned with my own values and choices. The sadness of familial rejection lingered, a quiet ache beneath the joy of the day, but it no longer defined me. I had chosen myself, and in doing so, realized I was surrounded by people who had chosen me exactly as I was. January brought crisp, bright days and a new beginning. 6 weeks after the Christmas that changed everything, I stood inside my new workshop, a space twice the size of my previous studio, with large windows for natural light and room for 3 assistants to work alongside me. The Sterling and Sage order had made the expansion necessary, and my designs would be prominently featured in their spring catalog, introducing them to a national audience. Since announcing our partnership, business inquiries had quadrupled. I was no longer a struggling artist, but the owner of a thriving small company with real momentum. My family dynamics had shifted in several ways since Christmas. As Uncle Daniel predicted, different people reacted differently to my boundaries. My mother remained cool and formal in her rare communications, insisting I had misunderstood their intentions and overreacted. She crafted a story for her social circle about my Christmas absence and emergency with an important client that supposedly couldn't wait. The narrative protected her image, while erasing my agency and my intentional choice not to attend. My father attempted to reassert authority in the only way he knew how, by emailing financial projections for my business, based on completely inaccurate assumptions about my sales and expenses. The document included a supposed timeline for when I would need to accept reality and enter the corporate world. I replied with a brief but professional note thanking him for his concern and assuring him that my business was profitable and growing. I did not include any data for him to dismiss or critique. Olivia remained distant, clearly aligned with our parents' perspective, but Ethan had reached out several times, each message slightly more open than the last. During our most recent conversation, he asked thoughtful questions about my creative process and business strategy, and he seemed genuinely interested in my answers. I never realized how much strategic thinking goes into what you do, he said. It's not just about making beautiful things. You have to anticipate trends, manage production, and build client relationships. It's actually very similar to what I do, just in a completely different industry. That small acknowledgement, that my work required real business skills and wasn't simply an extended craft project, felt significant coming from him. The most surprising response came from extended family members. My grandmother sent me a handwritten letter, expressing her admiration for my entrepreneurial spirit and craftsmanship, along with an invitation to visit her in London. Several cousins placed orders for custom pieces, treating me as a professional rather than the family oddity. As for my childhood belongings, I scheduled an appointment as indicated by the lawyer's letter and brought Emily with me for support. To my surprise, my mother wasn't there. She had arranged for Rosa, the housekeeper, to oversee everything instead. This small act, shielding me from a direct confrontation, was the closest thing to an acknowledgement of my feelings I could expect. Rosa helped me pack my things quickly, occasionally offering quiet comments that made it clear she had always been in my corner. Your mother tried to donate your jewelry-making tools to the community center, she whispered at one point. But I told her they were expensive and she should wait until you decided. She didn't know enough about them to argue. The notebooks, photos, and mementos were now stored in my apartment, tangible reminders of a childhood that had shaped me in both positive and painful ways. I was slowly sorting through them, keeping what still held meaning and letting go of items I had held onto only because they symbolized my family's approval. My friends, my chosen family, had been steadfastly supportive throughout the process. Our Christmas cabin celebration had been so wonderful that we decided to make it a yearly tradition. Several friends even scheduled therapy appointments of their own after seeing how I was working through my family issues with professional support. Dr. Lang, my therapist, had helped me understand that what happened at Christmas was not a failure but an essential step in my growth. You set a boundary and upheld it despite immense pressure and lifelong conditioning, she said during a recent session. That is something to be proud of. She was right. Through this painful process, I discovered strength I hadn't realized I possessed. I had built a business that reflected my values and ambitions. I had formed relationships rooted in mutual respect rather than obligation. I had learned to trust my own judgment about what success and happiness meant for me. Most importantly, I realized that walking away from damaging environments, even those wrapped in family ties and holiday traditions, creates space for genuine joy and growth. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to participate in your own destruction. As I arranged tools in my new studio, preparing for a productive day of creating, I thought about how different my life would be if I hadn't overheard that conversation. I might have spent years more chasing approval that would never come, shrinking myself to fit standards that were never meant for who I truly was. Instead, that devastating discovery opened the door to freedom. Not the freedom from family my parents threatened as punishment, but the freedom to define my own worth, set my own boundaries, and live a life aligned with my values. The journey was far from over. Family wounds don't heal in a single season, and habits formed over decades take time and effort to change. There would be more difficult conversations, more boundaries to reinforce, and more grief for the relationship I wanted but never fully had. But for the first time, I was moving forward as a whole person rather than a perpetual disappointment. I was Clara Bennett, jewelry designer and business owner, surrounded by people who saw and appreciated my full self. Last Christmas, the best gift I gave myself was the choice to walk toward my own truth instead of toward my family's gathering. By choosing to value myself, I had finally broken free from the weight of other people's expectations and discovered my own